This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1. Part 1.
You will hear a man phoning a woman about an advertisement he has seen in the paper for some furniture. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Hi there everybody, and welcome to Animal World. Before you start your visit, I'd just like to tell you about a few special events happening here today. They're all free, and I'd really encourage you to go to as many of them as you can, as I think you'll learn a lot. The first event is called the World of Ants, and it's happening this morning, quite soon, in the insect house, which is just a short walk from here. The well-known entomologist, Dr. David Crocker, who many of you will have seen on television, is giving a lecture all about ants, the different types of ants, how they organise themselves, what they eat, their behaviour, and so on. It's actually a fascinating subject. So, The World of Ants, a lecture by Dr. Crocker in the insect house, and it starts at 11 o'clock and lasts for 60 minutes. At midday, that's 12 o'clock, there's a film which is just as fascinating, and it's called The Great Migration. This is all about birds and how they migrate across continents and oceans using the sun, the stars, and the Earth's magnetic field. As I said, it's a film, an absolutely spectacular film, which all the family will enjoy. Some fabulous photography, and it's on in Theatre C, which you can see here just behind me. So bear that in mind for 12 o'clock. The next event is a demonstration taking place in the exhibition room and given by Monica Chadha. It's called Encouraging Garden Wildlife. Monica will be showing you ways of encouraging animals, birds and other wildlife to visit and live in your garden. How to place boxes for nests, what food to put out for them, and all sorts of practical advice. That's at 2:30, so just after lunch. The final free event for today is Birds of Prey. Tasha, their keeper, will be giving a display of some of our most magnificent birds and how they fly, and I thoroughly recommend this event. The display includes eagles, vultures and owls, and will be starting at 3:45 on the lawn outside. It's an unforgettable experience. So remember, on the front lawn at 3:45 to see the birds flying. Now, I'll just give you a few directions before you leave, especially for those of you who are feeling a bit hungry. When you leave the main building, you come to an area where the path divides. If you take the right-hand path, you'll see the lake on your right, and exactly opposite the lake on your left is the gift shop. Apart from selling gifts, it sells snacks, sandwiches and light drinks. If you walk on past the lake on your right, you'll also see the penguins. Go past the penguins and you'll come to the restaurant, also on your right. Don't go too far or you'll come to the aquarium. The aquarium is on your right at the crossroad, and just over the crossroad, also on your right, is the lion enclosure. If you're thinking of having a picnic, the best place to go is the picnic area. And for this, you need to turn left at the crossroad and walk along a few meters. At the end of the path, you'll find the picnic area on your left. Now, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And once again, I really hope you enjoy your visit. Thank you.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2.
You will hear a talk on New Zealand radio about an art sale which is being held to raise money for charity. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
One of the most anticipated art events in Christchurch is the charity art sale, organised this year by Neil Curtis. Neil, tell us all about it.
Well, Diane, this looks like being the biggest art sale yet. And the best thing about it is that the money raised will all go to charity. So what you probably want to know first is where it is. Well, the pictures will be on view all this week, most of them at the Star Gallery in the shopping mall. But we have so many pictures this year that we're also showing some in the cafe next door. So do drop in and see them any day between 9 and 5. Now, if you're interested in buying rather than just looking, and we hope a lot of you will be, the actual sale will take place on Thursday evening, with sales starting at 7:30. Refreshments will be available before the sale, starting at 6:30. We've got about 50 works by local artists showing a huge range of styles and media, and in a minute I'll tell you about some of them. You're probably also interested in what's going to happen to your money once you've handed it over. Well, all proceeds will go to support children who are disabled, both here in New Zealand and also in other countries. So you can find an original painting, support local talent, and help these children all at the same time.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20 Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Now, let me tell you a bit about some of the artists who have kindly agreed to donate their pictures to the charity art sale. One of them is Don Studley, who has a special interest in the art sale because his 5-year-old daughter was born with a serious back problem. After an operation earlier this year, she's now doing fine, but Don says he wants to offer something to help other less fortunate children. Don is totally self-taught and says he's passionate about painting. His paintings depict some of our New Zealand birds in their natural habitats. One relative newcomer to New Zealand is James Chang, who came here from Taiwan 9 years ago at the age of 56. Mr. Chang had 13 exhibitions in Taiwan before he came to live here in Christchurch, so he's a well-established artist, and art has been a lifelong passion for him. His paintings are certainly worth looking at. If you like abstract pictures with strong colour schemes, you'll love them. Natalie Stevens was born in New Zealand, but has exhibited in China, Australia and Spain. As well as being an artist, she's a website designer. She believes art should be universal, and her paintings use soft colours and a mixture of media. Most of her pictures are portraits, so watch out, some of them may even be friends of yours. And then we have Christine Shin from Korea. Christine only started to learn English 2 years ago when she arrived in New Zealand, but she's been painting professionally for over 10 years, and she sure knows how to communicate strong messages through the universal language of art. She usually works from photographs and paints delicate watercolours, which combine traditional Asian influences with New Zealand landscapes, giving a very special view of our local scenery. Well, that's all I have time to tell you now, but as well as these 4, there are many other artists whose work will be on sale, so do come along on Thursday. We accept cheques, credit cards or cash. And remember, even if you don't buy a picture, you can always make a donation.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2. Part 3.
You will hear a woman called Phoebe, who is training to be a teacher, talking to her tutor called Tony about research she has done in a school. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 25.
So, how did you get on with your school-based research, Phoebe?
Well, it was exhausting, but really valuable.
Good. What was the specific focus you chose?
My title is Attitudes Towards Study Among 11 to 12-year-old Pupils.
Right, and what made you choose that focus?
Well, that's a bit difficult. Lots of my classmates decided on their focus really early on, mainly on the basis of what they thought would help in their future career, you know, in their first year's teaching.
So that's what helped you decide?
Actually, it was that I came across a book written by experienced teachers on student attitudes, and that motivated me to go for the topic.
OK. So what were your research questions or issues?
Well, I wanted to look at the ways students responded to different teachers, particularly focusing on whether very strict teachers made teenagers less motivated.
And from your research, did you find that was true?
No, not from what I saw, from my 5 days observation, talking to people and so forth.
OK. We'll talk about the actual research methods in a moment, but before that, can you briefly summarise what your most striking findings are?
Well, what really amazed me was the significant gender differences. I didn't set out to focus on that, but I found that boys were much more positive about being at school. Girls were more impatient. They talked a lot about wanting to grow up and leave school.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. From doing the research, it was clear to me that you might start out to focus on one thing, but you pick up lots of unexpected insights.
Right. Did you get any insights into teaching?
Yes, certainly. I was doing a lot of observations of the way kids with very different abilities collaborate on certain tasks, help each other. And I began to realise that the lessons were developing in really unexpected ways.
So what conclusion do you draw from that?
Well, I know it's necessary for teachers to prepare lessons carefully, but it's great if they also allow lessons to go their own ways.
Good point. Now, I'm really pleased to see you doing this. Analysing and drawing conclusions based on data.
But surely this isn't proper data.
Because it's derived from such small-scale research. Well, as long as you don't make grand claims for your findings, this data is entirely valid. I like the way you're already stepping back from the experience and thinking about what you've learned about research. Well done.
But I know I could have done it better.
As you become more experienced, you'll find ways to reduce the risk of difficulties.
OK.
Now you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So, let's look in more detail at how you gathered your data. Let's start with lesson observation.
Well, it generally went quite smoothly. I chose my focus and designed my checklist. Then teachers allowed me into their classes without any problems, which surprised me. It was afterwards that the grueling work started.
Yeah, it's very time-consuming, isn't it? Making sense of analysing your observation notes.
Absolutely. Much more so than interview data, for example. That was relatively easy to process, though I wanted to make sure I used a high-quality recorder to make transcription easier. And I had to wait until one became available.
Right. And did you interview some kids as well?
In the end, yes. I talked to 10, and they were great. I'd imagined I'd be bored listening to them, but...
So it was easy to concentrate?
Sure. One of the teachers was a bit worried about the ethics, whether it was right to interview young pupils, and it took a while for him to agree to let me talk to 3 of the kids in his class, but he relented in the end.
Good. What other methods did you use?
I experimented with questionnaires, but I really regret that now. I decided to share the work with another student, but we had such different agendas it ended up taking twice as long.
That's a shame. It might be worth you reflecting on ways you might improve on that for future projects.
You're right, yeah.
OK.
And the other thing I did was stills photography. I didn't take as many pictures as I'd hoped to.
Lack of time?
It's pretty easy just snapping away, but I wanted each snap to have a purpose, that would contribute to my research aims, and I found that difficult.
Well, that's understandable, but remember...
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4.
You will hear a university librarian giving a talk to new students. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Okay, are you all settled? Well, first of all, welcome to Cardiff University. I'm here to explain what we can offer you. Now, as a new student at the university, you will probably need some sort of guidance to help you to use the library effectively to study and research. Some of you have asked about a guided tour, but we find this rather muddles people. So, in this first week, we run a series of talks which focus on different aspects of the library and its resources. You'll also find that to get the most out of the library, you really do need to be computer literate. And so all this term we run small classes which will bring you up to speed on how to access the computer-loaded information. Okay, now let me give you an outline of what's available to you. You'll find that the computers are increasingly used as a research tool. Many students do most of their research on the internet, and the library computers are permanently online. Having found what you need, you'll find you can readily save texts on your personal computer space to print off when you need. You might think that it is the fastest way to get information, but the links can be slow. Clearly, you can find lots on there, but much of it is useless information, as it is from highly debatable sources, so be critical. You'll also find that the library has loaded several CD-ROMs onto the computers from specialist reference sources, such as the MLA. It means we can expand what we offer you at very little extra cost and saves us having to invest in more and more books. The CD-ROMs contain exactly the same information as the reference books, as the two are updated together. Now, most of you will need to refer to journal articles in your work, and you'll find you can also access these online, and we encourage you to do so. Clearly, some of you will find the printed version more accessible as it sits on the shelves, but I'm afraid the intention is to phase these out eventually. However, you will still be able to print off a version of the text rather than photocopying the journal pages. So you must get used to working online. Naturally, we do still have the full range of classic reference books, additional to the CD-ROMs for you to use, and there are several copies of each one. This is because some of you may prefer to borrow a book rather than sit in the library. There is a restricted loan time on these, so that they are not missing from the shelves for too long. Although there is a section manager for each part of the library, they are very busy, and so if you do get stuck looking for things, you should ask the relevant cataloguing assistant. As your training supervisor, I just oversee your induction and will not be around after this initial week. Some of you may be interested to know that the library is offering specialised training sessions on writing a dissertation. Obviously, this is not relevant to those of you who are undergraduates, it is just for postgraduates. Your department will discuss the planning stage of the dissertation, i.e. what you're going to do with you, and we will focus on the structure of it. However, the training will also include some time on the computers. I realise most of you know how to organise files, but we can show you the different ways to run data programs. Your tutors will tell you at the outset how to set out the chapters they require, but you will need to ask them how they would like you to organise the bibliography, because it varies depending on your subject area. When you've got something together, the trainer here will look through the draft version for you to see if it's okay. And one final point, for those of you who have registered from abroad, we can offer individual sessions on dissertations if you feel you need them. If you require language lessons, then they are available from the International Centre next to the Law Department.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.